Hello, my name is Jennifer Sumrow, and I'm here to present the bilingual ESL evaluation data. This was presented originally in October of 2019 to our school board, and I'm going to do a mock re-presentation of what I had to tell the school board. Starting off, I said I'm here to present the evaluation data from the bilingual ESL programs for Mount Vernon ISD. First of all, I believe you have copies of our TELPAS scores from spring 2018 and 2019. That assessment is how our state measures a student's language acquisition. And if you'll see, I provided our board members with colored copies of 2018 scores and then 2019 scores. And they are put together by percentages. That way that the board can understand our numbers per category. Starting off, also, I had to explain a little bit about our LPAC program, which is our Language Proficiency Assessment Committee. And that committee consists of Chapter 89. We follow those rules in Chapter 89 for the LPAC committee. The commissioner's rules concerning the state plan for educating English learners state that all school districts that are required to provide bilingual education and or English as a second language program establishes and operates a language proficiency assessment committee. So in order to have the programs, you must have the committee to monitor those. The committee memberships include an appropriately certified bilingual educator for students served in that program, and Mount Vernon does have a bilingual program from pre-K all the way up to third grade at this point in time. And or appropriately certified ESL educator, which we do have ESL all the way through kindergarten through 12th grade. A parent of an English learner participating in those programs, a campus administrator. In addition to 3 required members of the LPAC, the school district may add other trained members to the committee. No parent serving on LPAC shall be an employee of the school. Upon initial enrollment for students, and at the end of each school year, the Language Proficiency Assessment Committee shall review all pertinent information on all English learners identified in accordance with the law of this title relating to testing and classification of students. We designate the language proficiency level of each English learner in accordance with guidelines issued pursuant to Chapter 89 of this title. We designate the level of academic achievement of each learner. We designate the subject to potential approval, the initial instructional placement of each English learner in the required program. And the LPAC also facilitates the participation of English learners in other special programs for which they are eligible while ensuring full access to the language program services under required law, which that means they could possibly be served under LPAC as well as special ed. Reclassify students at the end of the school year only as English proficient in accordance with the criteria described in Chapter 89. Required LPAC meetings are within 4 calendar weeks of the initial enrollment for identification and or review. So that means you need to be on the ball whenever a student enrolls to be able to LPAC them. Prior to state assessments for determination of appropriate assessments and designated support. So those are the accommodations for those LPACs before assessments. At the end of the year, annual review, and for the following year's placement decisions as needed to determine the progress of the student. If the student ends up failing throughout the year, the LPAC must meet. And that means that is a monitored student for Monitor 1 and Monitor 2. The documentation that's required in an ESL or a bilingual child's folder is the identification of the student as an English learner. That's their initial LPAC forms. The designation of the student's level of language proficiency. That's the initial testing. The recommendation of program placement. The parent approval. That's where the parent signs off to allow the child into the program, whether it's bilingual or ESL. The dates of entry into the placement within the program. So that means the start dates of the program that the child starts. The assessment information as outlined in Chapter 101, Subchapter AA of this title. Additional instructional interventions provided to address the specific language needs of that student. The date of exit from the program and parent approval from the program, and the results of monitoring for those students in year 1 and 2. And the home language survey must be in there to show that they are into the program, or they were. That is the initial parent approval to be tested. The ARD-LPAC collaboration. For English learners with identified special needs, LPAC shall meet in conjunction with the ARD committee members to review and provide recommendations with regard to the educational needs of the dual identified student. The decision-making must be based on the input of members of the LPAC and ARD committee who are directly familiar with the student's language needs and abilities of the classroom setting. When I was trained, that means that the ARD does not trump the LPAC committee, and the LPAC committee does not trump the ARD committee. They work in conjunction with each other. All right, testing and classification. For identifying English learners, school districts shall administer to each student who has a language other than English identified on the home language survey. That's almost like a check mark saying, yes, test this child. In pre-K through grade 1, the listening and speaking competencies of the state-approved English language proficiency test for identification, and in grades 2 through 12, the listening, speaking, reading, and writing components of the state-approved English language proficiency test for identification. And now, this year, the state has said that the Lost Links test is the state-identified testing for those subjects. All the language proficiency testing shall be administered by professionals or paraprofessionals who are proficient in the language of the test and trained in the language proficiency testing requirements of the test publisher. The LPAC, not the test administrator, must meet and review assessment results. So those committee members must review those results and decide the child's program placement. The LPAC makes the final determination based on factors in accordance with that TEC 29.056 for identification of an English learner. For students previously enrolled in a Texas school that comes to your school, the receiving district shall request and secure the student records, including the home language survey and all LPAC documentation. Make multiple attempts to obtain the student's home language survey and other LPAC documentation. That means multiple. Document in writing all attempts to contact the sending district to request records. That has to be written down. Once LPAC documentation has been reviewed or received from the previous Texas district, determine if evidence indicates the student was previously identified as English learner in Texas. If the student was previously identified as an English learner in Texas, the district code does not proceed with a new identification process. That means they come straight in and join the program at your school. The receiving district honors the original identification as the English learner, documents the evidence found in the LPAC paperwork, provides the continuation of services, bilingual or ESL, and communicates continuation of services with the parent or guardian. If a student transfers from outside of Texas, the school district shall do the following: review any documentation brought in by the student, determine if evidence indicates the student was previously enrolled in a Texas school. If evidence indicates the student was identified as an English learner in Texas, follow procedure on previous slide. If there's no evidence, that means you treat that student as a new enrolling student. That means you look at the home language survey for identification, and then you follow the steps to identifying that student. For parent rights and responsibilities, the parent or legal guardian shall be notified of their primary language and English of the following: their child's classification as an English learner, the recommendation for placement of their child in the required bilingual or English second language program, the purpose, the content, and benefits of the program, and the fact that the recommended bilingual ESL program is an integral part of the general education program. The parent or legal guardian shall receive written notice of the student's classification as an English learner and the LPAC request for approval of placement of their child in the recommended bilingual education or ESL program not later than the 10th calendar day as soon as the student enrolls. Provide written approval or denial of placement of their child in the recommended program. So if a parent does not want their child in either program or one or the other, they must sign off on that initial approval. Parent approval shall be considered valid for the student's continued participation in the required bilingual education or ESL program until the student meets the reclassification criteria described in that Chapter 89, and then the student graduates from high school or a change occurs in program placement. Pending parent approval of an English learner's entry into the services, the school district shall place the student in the recommended program. A school district may place in or exit a student from program without written approval of the student's parent or guardian if the student is 18 years of age, the parent or legal guardian provides approval through a phone conversation or email, or an adult who the school district recognizes as a stand-in for the parent relation to the student. Parent denial. In cases where a parent denies placement in bilingual or ESL, the student is identified in PEIMS as an English learner, which is EL, with a parent denial and remains classified as an English learner until the student meets reclassification criteria. Participates in annual, the TELPAS assessment until the student meets reclassification criteria. So even though they're denial, they'll still take the TELPAS testing. It is the responsibility of the LPAC to monitor those and the progress of all English learners, including those whose parents have denied program services. Right now in Mount Vernon ISD, we have a dual language immersion one way. That means there's only one version of there's only two languages in the program. That's English and Spanish. And the goal is to start out with the bilingual program in pre-K and move up to complete understanding of the English academic language by 5th grade. And at this time, I also said that our TELPAS, I described our TELPAS testing while the students are in the program. They are measured on 4 categories: the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. In grades K and 1, those students are scored holistically by their teacher. And in grades 2 through 12, the listening, speaking, and reading is measured online in a sit-down testing situation, and the writing is graded holistically through a teacher who has been trained with online basic training as well as calibration in reaching a certificate for that teacher as provided through TEA. The score labels, when the student is finished, they are recognized as a beginner, intermediate, advanced, or advanced high in the scoring of TELPAS. The listening and speaking and reading are scored by the computer. The writing is scored holistically in grades 2 through 12, and then grades K and 1. All the subjects are graded holistically by the teacher. Number of teachers in our district at this point, we are, last year, the 6 elementary teachers got certified in English, ESL, and then 1 elementary teacher got certified in bilingual. Currently, right now, we have 1 elementary teacher in progress for ESL certification, and we also had 2 because 1 has just sent in their information to get reimbursed for their certification test and to put it on their certificate. Yes, we do reimburse for that. ESL bilingual exception is what I had to write this year because last year we did not have, we needed 3 bilingual teachers in 1st, 5th, and 6th, and we needed 3 ESL teachers in 1st, 3rd, and 6th. This year the waiver was written for 3 bilingual teachers in 4th, 5th, and 6th, and then we needed 1 ESL teacher in pre-K because that teacher who was hired that was certified in ESL left the district. I guess she did not want to teach pre-K kids who were young and really quite needy. So she left, and we have since then hired a new teacher, but at the time of the exception, I had to write that for that pre-K program. MVISD is a dual language, one-way program, and in 2018-19, we exited 10 students from that program. In 2018, MVISD had 25% Hispanic students, and of those 25%, 10% were LEP. That means they were limited English speakers. And then 2019, MVISD had 29 Hispanic enrolled in school of our district, and then 11% were LEP, which is limited English proficient instead of limited English speakers. That means they're still learning their English academically, which is our goal when our students enter our programs in bilingual or ESL, to bring those up to equal that of a speaker of English. Now, when it comes to our approved bilingual program, we're a dual language immersion one way, where we have full proficiency in primary language as our goal, which I just explained that. And then instruction, the literacy and academic content in primary language is English, and then our teacher is certified in grade level content area and in bilingual education, who is paired with an ESL teacher. At least half of instruction delivered in the student's primary language for the duration of the program, and the other half will be in their native language. Our ESL program models here at Mount Vernon, we do both. We do the content-based and the pull-out. If we can do the content-based, that means every teacher that the student has is ESL certified. But if they're not, then they have to be pull-out, which only has them in 1 classroom or 2 that gets their services from an ESL teacher. ESL content-based, the general description is ESL content-based program model is an English acquisition program that serves students and identified as English learners through English instruction. The certifications a teacher must have is an ESL certification, which I have that as well, and it's very beneficial to all students, not just ESL students, but all students. The goal of the content-based ESL is for English learners to attain full proficiency in English in order to participate equitably in school. The instructional approach is this model targets English language development through academic content instruction that is linguistically and culturally responsible in English language and arts and reading, math, science, and social studies. The pull-out program, easily described, is an English language program where the student is under a supervision of an ESL teacher in most, I'd say when it comes to elementary, in most of their classes they have an ESL teacher, but there may be some that are not. That's where they're determined to be a pull-out, and they will be, they get their English language through English instruction through an ESL certified teacher. Certifications by a teacher is ESL certification. The goal of pull-out is to, the same as the other, to attain full proficiency in English in order to participate equitably in school. And this model targets English language development through academic content instruction that is linguistically and culturally responsive in English language, arts, and reading. They receive this by being in a pull-out program or inclusionary delivery model. Like I said, I explained the bilingual exception because and the ESL waiver is because we don't have those certified teachers in key areas. In order to get around that is we have to write the waiver and the exception to TEA, and usually they approve that around March or April, which is kind of crazy because the approval process seems to take too long after we've already finished the school year. So I'm not going to ask that question, but I'll just follow the directions. Ongoing monitoring of our English learners, that means the LPAC committee must, even the parent denials, monitor the progress of the academic and language proficiency in those schools. And the way we do that in the middle of the year is through TELPAS, and I've explained that it measures those categories of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. That's how we keep up with that throughout the year. The close to the time of testing administration of the state criterion reference test each year, the Language Proficiency Assessment Committee shall determine the appropriate assessment options. So we meet as an LPAC committee and determine which testing is appropriate for the student. They may take it in Spanish or they may take it in English, whichever is appropriate for that student in which their instruction is delivered. They may also need accommodations where they may need to sit close to the teacher. They may need some kind of accommodations through LPAC that will help them take the test more appropriately that they have been provided through the school and is also allowable through TEA in the state testing situation. For English learners with parental denial of services, the LPAC shall not designate supports for STAR assessments, no testing in Spanish, no English 1 special provision, which that goes with our EOCs. If a student is not successfully passing the STAR, but they're in the class, they can skip the test. There's no unschooled asylee refugee provision. So if a student is in denial, they're going to be treated just like a general education tester, except they're required to take TELPAS. At the end of each year, the LPAC reviews every English learner identified in PEIMS, being served in ESL or bilingual, with a parent denial, and who has been reclassified as an English proficient student and is in her first or second year of monitoring. Third and fourth year monitoring, no, we don't keep up with that, but we do keep up with those that I just identified. The reclassification of English learners means, it used to mean exit, but the new language is reclassification. For exit from a bilingual education program, a student may be classified as English proficient only at the end of the school year, in which a student would be able to participate equally in a general education program, and to me that means not having to take TELPAS and go through the LPAC committee. All English instructional program, this determination shall be based upon the following. Proficiency rating in the state-approved English language proficiency test for exit that is designated for indicating English proficiency in each of the 4 language domains, so that means TELPAS. Passing standard met on the reading assessment instrument under the Texas Education Code, that's STAR, so they need to pass it. Or for students at grade levels not assessed by aforementioned reading assessment instrument and score at the 40th percentile on both the English reading and the English language arts section, which now the state is determined that is going to be the ITBS test for those kiddos in grades 1 and 2, in K and 1 and 2, 11 and 12. Those are the only ones that it will be used for, because the other, K1, 2 will also be assessed through ITBS because the rest of them take reading STAR. The results of a subjective teacher evaluation using the state standardized rubric. And that rubric is always filled out by a teacher who is recommending the classification of a student. All right, subject teacher evaluation to meet ESSA Title III Part A requirements as described in the Texas ESSA State Plan for a standardized statewide exit criteria. The English learner reclassification rubric is utilized for the subjective teacher evaluation portion of reclassification, and that's just a rubric that the teacher has to fill out at the end of reclassification determination during LPAC. All right, decisions pending results. Of course, always, STAR is never here in time for graduation or in time for summer. So when we do LPACs, we have to do those before the kids leave, and that usually is not in, doesn't coincide with the date that the results are in. If STAR results are not yet available when the LPAC meets at the end of the school year to make reclassification decisions, the LPAC will conduct the following process. The LPAC makes the decision for reclassification pending STAR results if the student has met all other reclassification criteria, and if the LPAC determines that the student will be ready for reclassification if STAR results demonstrate that the student has met standard, approaches, meets, or masters levels. That means approaches is in there too. The LPAC must have a follow-up process as soon as scores are received by the district to enact on the LPAC reclassification decisions pending STAR results, and that's usually what we write on the reclassification form, is pending STAR results, if all the others are met. Once scores are received, a member of the LPAC will enter the scores into LPAC documentation and complete the reclassification process. A student in pre-K or kindergarten may not be reclassified. That is Chapter 89 rule. As a English learner, the first opportunity for an English learner to be considered for reclassification is in grade 1. And most of the time, they are not ready in grade 1 because they still are learning English. A school district must ensure that English learners are prepared to meet academic standards required by the TEC 28.0211. For English learners who are also eligible for special education, this is where it gets a little sticky. The district assures that decisions regarding those reclassification as English proficient are made by the LPAC in conjunction with the ARD. That means that we must work with the ARD. The LPAC and ARD must work together, not trump each other. The standardized process for English learner reclassification is followed except in cases where the student has a significant cognitive disability. In that case, for students that meets those significant cognitive disability, the LPAC and ARD shall meet and may determine that the state's English proficiency assessment for reclassification is not appropriate because of the nature of the student's disabling condition, may recommend that the student take the state's alternate English language proficiency assessment, which is TELPAS-ALP, and shall determine an appropriate performance standard requirement for reclassification by language domain. So they can meet and decide on that domain standard. All right, parent notification approval. Students meeting the requirements for reclassification may, at parent request, continue in the bilingual education or ESL program at the district's discretion. Reclassified students who continue to participate in that program do not generate bilingual education allotment funds, so you don't get funding for that. The LPAC shall monitor the academic progress of each student who has met the criteria for reclassification in accordance with TEC. For the first 2 years after reclassification, they still monitor those 2 years. This is a state requirement. Program evaluation. This is what I was talking about when I did my board program presentation, which is what I've started with here. And it was very interesting for the board to learn about these LPAC requirements and had a better understanding of what our school district does when it comes to inducting the students into the programs, what the programs look like, and then how they come out. And of course, how we monitor them to make sure that they're passing and they're learning each year. They're showing growth for being in the programs. The evaluation was done in October, and the board, like I said, understood a lot of the materials presented, and this concludes my presentation for our mock presentation online. Thank you.